Hi YouTube, my name is Slithery, and today I'm going to show you my way of making fun and interactive low-level adventures for your game of Dungeons & Dragons. I'll be showing you two examples using 5th edition, but the process should work for any edition and any tabletop system for a fantasy setting. Now what this process does is reorganises the way we tend to think and conjure up scenarios and conflicts for our players to experience, one after the other in a series of causes and effects. Instead, we're going to start at the end, the big finale of our Tier 1 adventure arc, and work backwards. Now if you try this technique, please let me know in the comments what you came up with, what you think of the process, and any way you can think of to improve it. Also, tell me what you think I should call the technique, because I don't have a name for it at the moment. Step 1. Find a BBEG, or Big Bad Evil Guy. The first thing you're going to do is find yourself an interesting final boss. These should generally be the kind of monster that has a spoken language, it makes sense that they would have minions or underlings, and they should be around challenge rating 4 or 5, because they're going to have underlings and the party will most likely be fighting them at level 4 and passing from tier 1 to tier 2. If you find this criteria too limiting, remember you can always choose a monster of a different challenge rating and buff or debuff their stats and abilities to make them a fair challenge for a level 4 party. Thinking about why your BBEG is a stronger or weaker example of that monster should help you in the next steps too. Of course, you can always generate a humanoid NPC with a character class for full customizability and balance. A 5th level spellcaster with a few challenge rating 1 minions to act as meat shields should be a challenging yet achievable final battle. Remember that these bosses don't have to be the big bad evil guys of your overall campaign, just the first boss. The next storyline the players encounter can be completely separate from this one, or it can lead directly on from it, with your boss simply being one part of a much bigger and more dangerous threat. The choice is yours, and the best part is, you don't have to make it until that first boss is defeated. For my two examples, say hello to Kemra, a Githyanki warrior with 10 extra hit points and an extra point in strength, and Dyathara, a Lamia. Step 2. Construct the final dungeon. Now that you have a monster, it's time to give them a base of operations. Think about what kind of lair they would likely choose. Searching for environment plus dungeon or environment plus battle map usually gives you plenty to choose from on Google Images, but if you want something unique, I recommend checking out dungeon.app, which can automatically generate you a dungeon. You can even make pretty versions in map drawing software like Incarnate. For my Githyanki adventure, here is a medium-sized dungeon that I generated in Dungeon, and for my Lamia adventure, here is a desert map made by Reddit user Zat Nikotel. Next, think about what kind of allies they would lair together with. A good way to help on this part is to read up on the lore surrounding your boss. I set all my games on Toril, the world of the Forgotten Realms setting, so the Forgotten Realms wiki is my go-to resource. You could also gain inspiration from the monsters flavor text in the books, lore YouTubers, actual plays, or D&D video games. For instance, according to Modern Canaan's Tome of Foes, Kemra's people, the Githyanki, spend most of their time on the astral plane, but they raise their eggs on the material plane. So, let's make Kemra the guardian of a Githyanki Creche. From there, I can think about the kind of encounters that would populate the nest. Less deadly Githyanki warriors should be a common sight, but if I don't diversify the encounters, the dungeon's just going to be dull. So, how about a red dragon wormling that is loyal to the Lich Queen Vlaakith? To stay with the draconic type, but provide some easier encounters, I'll add some ambush drakes too. Not all the encounters have to be combat based, of course. The Shasal Ku, as described in Tome of Foes, is particularly interesting to me, so let's add a renegade Gith somewhere in the dungeon that's plotting to steal the Githyanki eggs and raise them with the sect. The wiki mentions invisible undead Githyanki called Tlaikith, so I'm going to add a poltergeist somewhere in the dungeon using the variant spectre rules that's in the monster manual. And you can also use monsters to hint at other factions that are interested in the dungeon or the party. If I add an intellect devourer into the creche as a wandering monster, that implies that a mind flayer knows of the whereabouts of the creche. Lastly, you should include a monster that's a little more exotic and bizarre, and a great way to do this is to include a captive monster. Githyanki travel by Spelljammer, so it stands to reason that they would have a prisoner from the astral plane. I chose a Surlon, which got a 5th edition stat block in Boo's Astral Menagerie. The Githyanki have bound it with a magic item that hinders its psionic abilities, and they left it to age to death on the material plane, since time doesn't pass on the astral plane. At this point, don't worry about deciding which monsters will go where in your dungeon. The beauty of doing the last dungeon first is that you can change, reflavor, and rebalance things for the final showdown with plenty of time to spare. Let's plan a dungeon for our Lamia, Diathera now. Lamias like to corrupt the pure and innocent, so I'll make her lair a seedy drug den. According to the wiki, older editions featured Lamias that had the bodies of snakes, called Lamia Nobles. We'll keep the regular Lamia stats for now though, because the Lamia Noble was something like challenge rating 11. And for minions, I'll give Diathera a group of jackal wares to be her goons, and a few kinds of Yuan Ti. Brood guards for the servant work, purebloods as drug runners, and a Malison in charge of the jackal wares. I'll also give her a nightmare speaker as a second in command. Lamias prefer to have others do the fighting for them, so Diathera can be vain enough to let the nightmare speaker do all the fighting and only engage once she fails. 2 back-to-back challenge rating 4 monsters should be challenging but not quite as deadly as both of them at the same time. Let's also add some environmental features to this dungeon. A snake pit trap makes sense, as well as some rooms that are thick with Osra fumes, a drug that strengthens Yuan Ti and weakens non-Yuan Ti, and a room for the purebloods to concoct the white resin. I'll add in some emaciated humanoid slaves, addicts who do manual labour, watched over by the brood guards in exchange for one of the drugs. Lastly, I wanted to include some environmental storytelling with my exotic monster, so I looked into what other drugs are canonical in the Forgotten Realms setting, and I discovered Traveller's Dust, a rather nasty and very illegal powder said to be made from demon blood. So, Diathera has captured a Cambion. She's shackled, missing her armour, lost a lot of blood and her wings are broken. However, the Cambion can plane shift away at any time, say if the party try and kill her. She's allowing her blood to be made into Traveller's Dust because its use all but guarantees that the addict's soul will go to the abyss. Again, all these parts we're not going to fret about what goes where for now, we'll just keep them all in a tidy little box, ready for when the party are about to venture in. Step 3. The Level 1 Hook. Now that we have our end game in place, it's time to go all the way back to the beginning. We need to come up with a quest that 1. Brings the party to the nearby area or settlement that's close to your dungeon. 2. Sets the party on a path that will have them opposing your big bad evil guy. And 3. Is of a danger level appropriate for a level 1 party. The first hook can be as directly or indirectly connected to your finale as you can think up. It might be more appropriate for your baddies to be in your party's face from the get-go, and the main drive for doing other quests is to tip the balance of power in favour of the party and their allies. Or, perhaps, your big bad evil guy and their minions are a secretive force that are only discovered at the final hour. Keep in mind though, that which one you choose will inform the kinds of quests that you need to offer the party in between the level 1 hook and the final adventure. Here's how I would set a party against Khemra the Githyanki. The party are approached in their starting town by a druid of Yuan Ti that tends the local lord's orchards and advises farmers. They're looking for a group of adventurers to investigate a disturbance in the nearby wild woods, offering the party a moderate sum of gold for the trouble and providing a scroll of animal messenger so that they can report back with their findings swiftly. As the party enter the forest, they feel a vague sense of unease, and the sounds of wildlife all around are especially loud. Many sets of heavy tracks are leading away from the direction that they are approaching. A startled deer crashes through the growth and attacks the party. And however they deal with the deer, a pair of bandits that are trying their hand at poaching accuse you of stopping them from hunting the deer. If they're kept alive and interrogated, they tell the party that something to the east has spooked the animals, and some are far from their usual grounds. Easy pickings as far as they're concerned. Following the tracks, or the bandits' directions, leads to the source of the disturbance, a small Githyanki fort standing in the centre of a ring of blasted and barren ground. This may seem unrelated to the Githyanki nest at first, but keep in mind that the Githyanki and Githzerai are sworn enemies that hunt each other across the multiverse. The reason for the fort's appearance is the existence of the Githyanki Creche. Linking the two will be our next step. But before that, we also need a hook for the party that will discover our drug-dealing Lamia Diathera. In a desert settlement, a young man desperately beseeches the party to help find his fiancée who has gone missing. Midway through describing her, frenzied screaming can be heard outside, followed by the hubbub of a concerned crowd. Along the road outside, a pure-hearted bard was literally scared to death, pointing down the road at nothing before he died. Onlookers tell the party that he was screaming about minotaurs. The party with the highest perception roll also spots the tail of a snake slither around the corner and behind a hut. This is actually our nightmare speaker in her serpent form. If the party give chase, they spot a viper as long as a man slithering into a tiny tunnel at the end of the path, and 2 jackals suddenly snap to attention and gaze at the 2 frontmost party members, trying to magically put them to sleep before they assume their hybrid jackalware forms and attack. Now, with a few bad saves or bad choices, this scenario could end with all of the party members asleep. If that happens, the Nightmare Speaker re-emerges and places a dash of Ostra oil on the lips of the purest looking party member, causing fitful dreams and sowing the seed of an addiction. Step 4. Sew it all together. By this point, you've come up with an intriguing hook for 1st level and a dungeon for 4th level. Now, we just need to fill the gap and create some content for your party's 2nd and 3rd levels. If your experience using this technique to create a Tier 1 adventure is anything like mine, this should be a fairly simple and intuitive process, as coming up with the quests and side quests that send the party to the final dungeon, for me, was the easiest part. The trick here will be to come up with a few story hooks, nothing super in detail, but they should do one of 2 things. 1. Work towards revealing the identity of the big bad evil guy or the location of the dungeon, or 2. Show the negative consequences of the big bad evil guy and the dungeon's presence on the surrounding area. You don't have to spell that out for your players in every hook. The best mid-adventure hooks will fit together like pieces of a puzzle and point your players towards the big showdown. You also don't need to feed them hooks one at a time or in any certain order. Show them to your players when it's appropriate and organic to do so. Pay attention to which ones they're interested in, and if they've not quite gotten the full picture yet, you can make it clear which remaining hook they should take to complete the puzzle. Bonus points if said remaining hook can be engaged with in multiple ways. That way, you can drop it right before the final battle and make it look like you planned the whole thing. This strategy also has 2 additional benefits. 1, you can focus more prep time on the hooks that your players are interested in, and 2, it helps to gauge which of the pillars, exploration, social interaction, and combat, that your players prefer to engage with. So, for the last time, let's return to our 2 examples. The party report back to the druid that a fort has appeared out of nowhere and destroyed the flora and animals' nests. There are 2 Githyanki inside. There's a monk meditating to hold the fort up, and there's a diviner poring over a map. The diviner is tight-lipped about their reasons for being here, but sympathetic to the druidic circle and willing to accompany the party to town to explain themselves. Depending on what the party say and do determines how well that meeting goes, but the Githyanki reveals to the party and the circle that a Githyanki nest has been set up somewhere in the area, and the Githyanki travelled here from Limbo to root them out. From there, the party can help the circle rehome the displaced animals. They can take care of a pair of Githyanki raiders that are riding ambush drakes and terrorizing the trade routes. They can take a fairy ring to the Feywild to collect some soil that will rejuvenate the trees. They can follow clues that suggest that one of the Lord's court is host to an intellect devourer. Or they can defend the Githyanki fort from a siege of angry Malar-worshipping beastmen. Before long, the diviner tells the party that they've learned of a magical item that will allow him to locate the nest instantly, an astral focus that's currently in the possession of an ogre that claims to be a mystical seer and controls a small troop of goblins. The party can retrieve the focus by any means they wish, whereupon the diviner can use it to pinpoint the location of the Githyanki nest and our warrior Kemra. The party approach the Githyanki nest with orders to defeat the Githyanki within, or force a retreat. And whether the party destroy the Githyanki eggs or allow the Chassal Ku to take them can have implications for any Tier 2 adventures that are yet to come. You'll notice how Kemra did not even need to be introduced until the very end, as the consequences of his mere presence has created everything that the party is engaged with up until this point. Diathra and her minions, on the other hand, are likely to get much more involved. After the encounter with the Jackalwares, the party are on Diathra's radar, more so if they begin asking questions about the missing woman. The party can inquire at her old place of work, where she confided in a colleague that she was kissed by a strange woman, actually a Yuan Ti administering some Osra oil, in a nearby town while she was out on a delivery. They can investigate a den of Jackalwares, discovering among their loot a small bag containing shimmering serpentine scales. They can help or slay a poor soul that ended up as the first of Diathra's experiments with demon blood, and is growing horns and a tail and lashing out at people. They can chase down the Nightmare Speaker the next time she targets an NPC with her Invoke Nightmare ability, or they can even set a trap for her. Lastly, they could help a Tyran Paladin who has been alerted to the presence of a demon somewhere nearby. Eventually, all signs will point to a seedy pipe den run by a haughty Yuan Ti pureblood who keeps her den full of heady smokes and mists to obscure her reptilian features. Diathra's lair lies below a secret trapdoor in a booth at the very back of the den. So, to recap, this process has 4 steps to it. Step 1. Create your boss monster first. Step 2. Create and populate their lair. Step 3. Create your level 1 quest. And Step 4. Create hooks that flow naturally from beginning to end. Running a game this way requires a little bit of flexibility and responding to your players' decisions, but it's worked well for me as a creative tool that puts the important parts of a 5-level adventure in the right order for ideas to just fall into place naturally. I hope you give it a go, have some fun with it, and create some great stories for your players. Thank you for watching.